So let's start talking about some quadratic equations. So for our quadratic equations, we can use the quadratic formula, which is what this lesson is all about. We can see our quadratic formula here. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what we're doing here is just plugging in. So I'm going to start with number 1 and identify all my parts. 2 is a, 4 is b, and that negative 6 is my c. So I'm going to plug them all in. So I get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 6 all over 2 times 2. And from there, I go through the long process of simplifying this. Negative 4 plus or minus the square root, 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times 2 would give me negative 8. And negative 8 times negative 6, I believe, gives me a positive 48. Double check that. Yes. From there, and then my bottom would be over 4. From there, I can go ahead and simplify. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 48, which is 64, over 4. This gives me two problems now. So I have negative 4 plus the square root of 64, which is 8, over 2, and negative 4 minus the square root. That's what that plus or minus means, over 4. Simplify, I don't know why I made that one into a 2. 4. So negative 4 plus 8 is 4 over 4, which would give me an answer of 1. And negative 4 minus 8 would give me negative 12 over 4, which would give me an answer of negative 3. So these problems are a little long. There are calculators out there that'll do the quadratic formula for you. So honestly, to simplify this section, I would just Google quadratic formula and type in your A, B, and C, and you should get your answers a little bit faster. Or at least you can check your answers that way if you are struggling with this section. If you have a question here, like where there's nothing in front here, remember that that's really a 1. So I have A, B, and C, and I can plug them in. So negative B, so that negative 6 would become a positive 6. I change the sign. Plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8 all over 2 times 1. We're going to simplify. So I get 6 plus or minus the square root, 36. Anything squared should give you a positive out, just for reference. So if you're getting a negative out, you're probably doing something wrong. 32 over 2. So I get 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 over 2. And that goes into two problems. 6 plus 2 over 2, square root of 4 is 2, or 6 minus 2 over 2, which will give me 8 over 2, which is 4, or it'll give me 4 over 2, which will give me an answer of 2. Okay. And our last one, again, these are longer problems, but just bear with them. Again, A, B, C. This is something that I would recommend. You could probably find a calculator that does the quadratic formula. If you just Google it, it'll make your life a lot easier. But if you want to do it all by hand, we have negative b here. So negative of a negative would be positive 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c. All of that over 2 times a. So 5 plus or minus 25 4 times 6, we have 2 negatives, so plus 24. Right? Yes. All that over 2. And what you're going to notice here is this is not going to be a nice square root. So I'm not sure exactly. Oops, other way. So I'm going to combine, and I get 5 plus or minus the square root of 99 over 2. We can simplify this. We can simplify our root. We could also make this into a decimal. If you make this into a decimal and Apex doesn't, just change all of Apex's answer choices into decimals as well. So if I were to plug this into a calculator, I would get 5 plus 9.9 over 2, or 5 minus 9.9 over 2, which would give me answers of, clear that off, 9.9 plus 5 divided by 2 would equal 7.45, or 5 minus 9.9 divided by 2 would give me an answer of negative 2.45. That would be, maybe your answer choices are still in, they have the radical in them. You could make them into decimals. The other way to have done this problem would be 5 plus or minus, and we want to bring things out of our radicals. We're looking for perfect squares. 99 breaks down to 9 and 11, and 9 can be broken down to 3s. So I could have pulled out a 3 square root 11 over 2. So it might have looked something like that in Apex as well. But again, you can make that into decimal by just doing 3 square root 11 into a calculator, and you'll get the same answer out. So just a little way to do that. These are more of the same kind of problem. Let's see if there's different ones. Everything's the same on here. I'll do 2 more of these, but it's all the same problem types. Again, it's really just using that formula to calculate it all out. So what I would recommend doing is either practicing just with the formula, or there should be some type of online calculator for quadratic formula where you can input A, B, and C, and it'll just give you the answer right out. So it'd be a way easier way to do this. So for this one, we want to calculate again. We got A, we got B, and we got C. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 5, times negative 3. Be careful with those negatives. Make sure they're included where they are appropriate. Okay, and we can go from there. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4. And we have, let's see, what is that going to give me? 64 times 5 times, oh, nope. Yes, positive 60. 4 plus 60 over 10. We simplify, so we get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 64 over 10, and this goes 2 ways again. So negative 2 plus 8 over 10, or negative 2 minus 8 over 10. Negative, that would give me 6 over 10, or 0.6 if this was a decimal. This would give me negative 10 over 10, which would give me an answer of negative 1. The last one I'll do will be 10 here. A, B, and C. So negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4, A, negative 2. All of that over 2 times A, or 3 in our situation. Simplifying, we get negative 6 plus or minus 36 minus plus 2 negatives in here, so I'll get a plus 12. 12 times 2, 24. all of that over 2 times 3, which is 6. Simplifying, negative 6 plus or minus 36 plus 24 is 60 over 6. Again, we have a situation here where we have a radical. Apex may choose to make it into decimals. It may choose to leave it as a radical. I'm going to start off with making this into a decimal. I personally like making a decimal and then making my answer choices match that decimal is my preference. So 7.75 over 6 and negative 6 minus 7.75 over 6. See, minus 6 divided by 6. This will give me a decimal answer of about 0.29. Negative 6 minus 7.75 divided by 6 would give me a negative 2.29 for a decimal. Again, if I had answer choices from that point that were in radicals, I would just make the radicals into decimals. I could have also simplified 60. So what is 60? It would be 6 and 10, which would be 5 and 2, and 3 and 2, which means my 2 can be taken out. So it might have looked something like negative 6 plus or minus 2 square root 15 over 6 in apex. Might be something that you see in there. So I'll leave it there. If you have questions, let me know. Again, I would look online for ways to do this a little bit faster.